Good evening. Have you ever walked into a room and noticed how some people just light it up? They don't necessarily have movie star looks or designer clothes, but something about them draws people in. You feel better just by being around them. You listen more closely when they speak. And if you're honest, you'd like a little of whatever they have. That's something. That invisible force isn't magic. It's not genetics. It's not money. It's habit, a set of deeply human learnable behaviors practiced consistently. So today I want to share with you the secret habits of highly attractive people. And spoiler alert, it has nothing to do with looks and everything to do with presence, mindset, and emotional energy. Let's start with what might be the most magnetic, most underestimated habit of all: the ability to make others feel truly seen. Attractive people, genuinely attractive people, have a way of making you feel like you matter. They don't need to be loud. They don't dominate the conversation. They don't fill silence just to feel important. They do something far more powerful. They pay attention, not surface level nod and smile attention, but full, undivided, intentional attention. They look you in the eye, not with the glazed over stare of someone waiting for their turn to talk, but with presence. They listen in a way that makes you feel heard, maybe for the first time in a while. They don't just ask questions, they ask the kind that signal "I'm with you, keep going." And you know what's wild? That kind of attention is rare. In today's world, it almost feels like a superpower, because we're distracted constantly. We scroll while we talk, we text while we listen, we multitask our way through relationships. And somewhere along the way, we started confusing being around someone with being with them. But the people who draw others in, they aren't performing, they aren't polishing their image in real time. They're just there, fully, completely, with you. They're not trying to impress you, they're trying to understand you. There's a reason you feel safe around those people. There's a reason you remember them. It's because they've tapped into something universal, the human need to feel seen. Think about that for a moment. Most of us spend our lives just wanting to be understood, not fixed, not judged, just seen for who we are. And the people who offer that gift without agenda, without effort, become unforgettable. I remember years ago I attended this leadership summit, the kind where everyone wears their title like armor. There were executives, influencers, consultants, the kind of room where everyone is trying to outshine everyone else. But then there was this one man, a CEO of a Fortune 100 company, big name, serious power. And yet the moment I met him, all of that melted away, not because of anything he said about himself, but because of how he made me feel. For 5 minutes it was as if the rest of the room didn't exist. He looked me in the eye. He asked thoughtful questions. He remembered something I'd said earlier in the session and brought it up, not to flatter but to connect. There was no phone in his hand, no glancing over my shoulder to find someone more important. In those 5 minutes I felt like the only person that mattered. And you know what? I still remember how that felt. Years later, he probably didn't even realize the impact he had. Because that kind of presence, it wasn't a trick, it wasn't a performance, it was a habit. Here's the truth. Presence is more attractive than charisma, more impactful than charm. It doesn't require a degree, a promotion, or a wardrobe upgrade. It requires a choice, a willingness to show up fully, a decision to say "I'm here and you matter." That is what makes someone unforgettable. So here's the challenge. Next time you're in a conversation, put the phone down. Resist the urge to think about your reply before the other person finishes speaking. Stop rehearsing your next point while they're pouring out something important. Lean in, listen fully, see that, because in a world full of noise, your presence might just be the most powerful gift you have to give. When we think of what draws us to someone, what makes them truly attractive, not in the surface sense but in the kind of way that makes us lean in and feel safe around them. It's rarely perfection. In fact, perfection often pushes people away. It creates distance. Because when someone seems flawless, we start to feel like we have to perform too. We compare, we shrink, we question our own worth. But truly attractive people don't demand your admiration. They invite your and they do that through a quiet, grounded kind of confidence, the kind that doesn't come from having all the answers but from being okay not having them. Highly attractive people radiate confidence, not because they've mastered everything, but because they've accepted them. They walk into a room and they don't need to announce themselves with flair or noise. Their energy says it all. Here I am, There's a kind of peace in that, a stillness, the sense that they are not trying to win you over or prove their value. And strangely, that's exactly what makes people gravitate toward them. It's tempting to think we need to polish our image to be liked, to filter our flaws, to script our words, and present the highlight reel. But what draws people in isn't the mask, it's the moment you let it drop. It's when you say, "This is me," without apology. Because when you give people permission to see the imperfect, you give them permission to be imperfect too. That's how connection begins. And that's how trust is built. There's real science behind that. A study published in the Harvard Business Review found that people who show vulnerability in healthy doses, who admit mistakes, who laugh at themselves, who are real, are actually seen as more likable and more trustworthy, not because they're weak, but because they're relatable. You don't follow perfect people, you admire them from a distance, but real people, you follow them into the fire. I think about someone like Keanu Reeves. He's not loud, he doesn't dominate headlines with controversy or charisma, but he has something else, an authenticity that draws people in. He doesn't try to outshine others, he just shows up exactly as he is, quiet, humble, a little awkward at times, but grounded, genuine. And that's what makes him magnetic. It's not about image, it's about alignment. Who you are on the outside matches who you are on the inside. That's the kind of confidence that can't be faked. The world doesn't need more polished personas, it needs more people who are okay with being seen, really seen, not just when they're winning but also when they're learned, not just when they're certain, but when they're honest about their doubts, because that's when we recognize ourselves in them. That's when we remember that we're not alone in trying to figure it all out. So what does that mean for us? It means that the goal isn't to impress everyone. It's not about being perfect in every room, every conversation, every post. It's about being real, about owning your story, even the messy chapters. It's about walking into the room not thinking, "How can I make them like me?" but asking, "How can I show up fully as myself?" Confidence doesn't come from being flawless. It comes from being at peace with who you are, even when you're a work in progress. And when people see that in you, when they see that quiet strength, that comfort in your own skin, they don't just see you, they feel you, and that is what makes them remember you. There's a kind of person who walks into a room and somehow everything shifts. The atmosphere changes, people start smiling more, the room feels lighter, safer, more alive, but they don't do it by being the loud. They don't demand attention, and they don't try to be the center of it all. They contribute more than they consume, and that more than looks, more than charm is what makes them deeply attractive. It's easy to mistake presence for dominance. We see people who speak the most and assume they must be leaders. But real presence isn't about control, it's about contribution. It's not about walking into the room and thinking, "Watch me." It's walking in and thinking, "How can I lift the energy? How can I help others feel better, lighter, seen?" Attractive people are energy aware. They know that how they show up impacts everyone around them. So they take responsibility for the energy they bring, and that's the difference. They don't let the mood of the room shape their attitude, they shape the mood of the room with their attitude. And it's not always big, dramatic gestures. Sometimes it's a smile when someone looks tired, sometimes it's cracking a joke when the silence is too heavy. Sometimes it's just listening with genuine interest, without rushing to speak. But those small things repeated over time make a person unforgettable. A friend of mine volunteers every week at a local nursing home. He doesn't do it for credit, he's not wealthy, he's not trying to build a platform or write a book about it. But when he walks in, the whole place lights up. The residents who barely speak will shuffle down the hall just to sit with him. He jokes, he listens, he asks about their day, he dances, terribly. They love him, not because he's doing anything flashy, but because he's fully present, fully alive, and fully focused on giving joy. It made me realize something important. Energy is more powerful than appearance. People may compliment your looks, but they remember how you made them feel. And no one feels connected to someone who only takes up space. We feel connected to people who offer something, a smile, a kind word, an open heart, a calm presence in a chaotic room. Too often we walk into spaces asking, "How do I fit in?" or "What will they think of me?" But what if we changed the question to, "What energy do I want to bring into this room?" That shift changes everything. Because when you lead with energy instead of ego, you're not performing, you're contributing. And people can feel the difference. Think about the people you most enjoy being around. Are they perfect? Probably not. But but they bring something that lifts you. Maybe it's lightness, maybe it's curiosity, maybe it's calm, but they leave you better than they found you, and that's the mark of true attractive. It's not just about mood, it's about responsibility. Every one of us has a choice in every interaction. Reflect the energy around us, or set a new tone. Be a mirror or be a light. One is passive, the other is powerful. So here's the real question. Are you a thermometer, measuring the temperature of every room you walk into? Or are you a thermostat, setting the tone, leading the vibe, changing the climate? Because the people who lead with energy, not ego, they don't just walk into a room, they elevate. And that's the kind of presence the world is drawn to and never forgets. There's a kind of person who walks into a room and somehow everything shifts. The atmosphere changes, people start smiling more, the room feels lighter, safer, more alive. But they don't do it by being the loud. They don't demand attention, and they don't try to be the center of it all. They contribute more than they consume, and that more than looks, more than charm is what makes them deeply attractive. It's easy to mistake presence for dominance. We see people who speak the most and assume they must be leaders. But real presence isn't about control, it's about contribution. It's not about walking into the room and thinking, watch me. It's walking in and thinking, how can I lift the energy? How can I help others feel better, lighter, seen? Attractive people are energy aware. They know that how they show up impacts everyone around them. So they take responsibility for the energy they bring. And that's the difference. They don't let the mood of the room shape their attitude. They shape the mood of the room with their attitude. And it's not always big, dramatic gestures. Sometimes it's a smile when someone looks tired. Sometimes it's cracking a joke when the silence is too heavy. Sometimes it's just listening with genuine interest, without rushing to speak. But those small things repeated over time make a person unforgettable. A friend of mine volunteers every week at a local nursing home. He doesn't do it for credit. He's not wealthy. He's not trying to build a platform or write a book about it. But when he walks in, the whole place lights up. The residents who barely speak will shuffle down the hall just to sit with him. He jokes, he listens, he asks about their day. He dances, terribly. They love him, not because he's doing anything flashy, but because he's fully present, fully alive, and fully focused on giving joy. It made me realize something important. Energy is more powerful than appearance. People may compliment your looks, but they remember how you made them feel. And no one feels connected to someone who only takes up space. We feel connected to people who offer something, a smile, a kind word, an open heart, a calm presence in a chaotic room. Too often we walk into spaces asking, how do I fit in, or what will they think of me? But what if we changed the question to, what energy do I want to bring into this room? That shift changes everything, because when you lead with energy instead of ego, you're not performing, you're contributing, and people can feel the difference. Think about the people you most enjoy being around. Are they perfect? Probably not. But they bring something that lifts you. Maybe it's lightness, maybe it's curiosity, maybe it's calm, but they leave you better than they found you, and that's the mark of true attractive. It's not just about mood, it's about responsibility. Every one of us has a choice in every interaction. Reflect the energy around us, or set a new tone. Be a mirror or be a light. One is passive, the other is powerful. So here's the real question. Are you a thermometer, measuring the temperature of every room you walk into? Or are you a thermostat, setting the tone, leading the vibe, changing the climate? Because the people who lead with energy, not ego, they don't just walk into a room, they elevate. And that's the kind of presence the world is drawn to and never forgets. We live in a world that constantly tells us to please others, to say yes to every request, to be available at all times. We're taught that being liked is the most important. But here's the reality. When you try to please everyone, you end up pleasing no one, least of all yourself. Attractive people don't chase validation. They don't go out of their way to win approval or avoid conflict. Instead, they have standards, and more importantly, they have boundaries. They know that if they want to be the best version of themselves, they have to protect what matters most: their time, their peace, and their energy. Research shows that people with the strongest boundaries are often the most compassionate. Brené Brown, a renowned researcher on vulnerability and shame, has pointed out that when we have clear boundaries, we aren't building walls, we're building respect. We respect ourselves enough to say no when something doesn't align with our values or our goals. We respect others enough to not let them drain us. we're asked for more than we can give, and in doing so, we teach people how to treat us, not by our words, but by our actions. Think about someone like Oprah. She is warm, she is approachable, she makes everyone feel like they matter. But make no mistake, she doesn't tolerate disrespect. She doesn't tolerate anything less than what she knows she deserves, and she sets that standard with grace, not arrogance. Oprah doesn't need to shout or demand respect. She simply shows people how to treat her by the way she treats herself. She doesn't chase approval. She doesn't apologize for her worth. And because of that, people are drawn to her not because she's perfect, but because she is clear about what she will and won't tolerate. The reason this is so powerful is because of a fundamental truth. When we fail to set boundaries, we build resentment, we stretch ourselves too thin, we say yes when we mean no, and eventually we start to feel burned out, overwhelmed, and even disconnected from the people we're trying to please. But when we establish boundaries, we're not just protecting ourselves, we're protecting the relationships that really matter. We're ensuring that the time and energy we invest is going into things and people that nourish us, rather than drain. Think about the moments when you've been at your best, when you felt confident, energized, and clear-headed. More often than not, those moments happened when you had taken a stand for your boundaries. You said no to distractions, to unnecessary commitments, to things that didn't align with your values, and in that space you were able to show up as your best self, with full presence, full energy, and full heart. So here's a simple but powerful action step. Stop apologizing for having boundaries. Stop feeling guilty for saying no. Saying no to others is often saying yes to your peace, to your well-being, to your dreams. It's saying yes to your true self and protecting what is sacred to you. The most attractive people in the world aren't the ones who say yes to everything. They're the ones who know their worth, set clear boundaries, and live with the confidence that comes from honoring those boundaries. They show us that to truly be compassionate to others, we first have to be compassionate with ourselves. We teach people how to treat us, not by what we say but by what we allow. So next time you're faced with a request, a favor, or an invitation that doesn't serve you or your values, remember, saying no isn't a rejection of others, it's an affirmation of you. There's something deeply magnetic about people who are always evolving, not in the flashy, trend-chasing kind of way, but in a quiet, grounded, intentional way. They're not trying to become someone else. They're not running from who they are. In fact, it's the opposite. They're peeling back the layers of who they're not, so they can get closer to who they really are. That kind of growth is rare, and it's irresistible. We're drawn to people who are on a journey, the ones who don't pretend to have all the answers, but who are willing to ask the right questions, the ones who aren't afraid of being a work in progress. There's something powerful about being around someone who is actively working on themselves, not because they're broken, but because they care about becoming better friends, better partners, better leaders, better human beings. It's easy to admire someone who's polished, but we trust the ones who are growing, because when someone is growing, we know they're not stagnant, we know they're not clinging to comfort or avoiding discomfort. They are doing the hard, unglamorous work of reflecting, learning, and changing. And that shows a kind of emotional courage that can't be faked. The most attractive people you meet often read not just to be informed, but to be challenged. They write not to be impressive, but to understand themselves. They ask for feedback not because they doubt their worth, but because they know they can always be better. There's a humility in that, a kind of strength that says, I'm proud of who I am, but I'm not done yet. And that's where the magic lives, not in the arrival but in the becoming. There's data that backs this up. Studies have shown that the happiest, most connected, most fulfilled people tend to be lifelong learners. It makes sense when you think about it. Growth gives us momentum. It gives us hope. Because even when life is hard, even when things fall apart, if you're growing, you're moving, you're not stuck, you're not resigned, you're still reaching for something more. And that mindset, that belief in your own ability to become better, to evolve, it inspires the people around you. Because growth isn't just about you. When you commit to becoming more of who you really are, you give others permission to do the same. You set a tone. You create an environment where curiosity is valued over certainty, where effort is valued over That's the kind of energy that lifts rooms and builds trust. That's the kind of presence that stays with people. What's most inspiring isn't when someone says they want to change, it's when they actually do the work. Not just once but consistent. When they're willing to have uncomfortable conversations. When they face the parts of themselves they'd rather ignore.
When they show up to the process, day after day, even when no one's watching, that's what makes us believe in them. That's what makes us believe in ourselves. Because growth is hope in action. It's someone saying, I believe in a better version of me, and I'm willing to do the work to meet that person. That kind of belief is contagious. It doesn't just inspire admiration, it inspires action. It makes people want to rise to their own potential, to stretch beyond what they thought they were capable of. The people who are always growing, always learning, always becoming, they remind us that we're never finished, and that the most attractive thing we can offer the world isn't perfection, it's progress, not a final version of ourselves, but the unfolding of something honest, something human, something real. What really makes a person stand out, what makes us lean in when they speak, remember how they made us feel long after they've left the room, or feel drawn to them without always knowing why. It's not their cheekbones, it's not their bank account, it's not their job title, their wardrobe, or the kind of car they drive. Those things might catch the eye for a moment, but they don't hold attention, they don't create connection, they don't make someone unforgettable. What does? It's the ability to make others feel seen in a world where so many feel invisible. It's the kind of presence that doesn't try to outshine, but to include. It's when someone makes you feel like you matter, not because of what you can offer them, but because they genuinely care. That alone is rare. That alone is powerful. It's also the courage to show up with real confidence, not the kind that's loud and performative, but the quiet kind, the kind that says, I know who I am, and I'm okay with it. That kind of confidence doesn't need to seek attention, because it's rooted in something deeper, self-respect. And when someone carries that kind of peace within themselves, you can feel it. They don't compete, they don't compare, they walk into a room and without saying a word, they make space for others to be comfortable just as they are. Then there's the energy they bring, not the chaotic kind, not the overly polished, curated version of positivity, but real warm, uplifting energy. They don't try to impress you, they try to lift you. They walk in with the intention to contribute, not to consume, and that intention is felt, whether it's through laughter, a kind word, or just their presence. They change the atmosphere around them, because they take responsibility for it. They also have the strength to say no, to set limits, to protect their peace, and by doing that they show others how to respect them. They don't confuse kindness with self-sacrifice. They understand that boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges to healthier relationships. Because when we value ourselves, we teach others how to value us too. And maybe most important of all, they never stop growing, they stay curious, they stay open. They're not interested in pretending they've arrived. They're more interested in becoming more honest, more kind, more whole. They read, they listen, they reflect, not because they're broken, but because they believe they can always go deeper, always reach higher. And that kind of humility, that relentless commitment to evolving, is what makes them truly magnetic. That kind of attractiveness doesn't fade, it doesn't age, it deepens, it becomes richer with time, because it's built on something lasting: character, care, and authenticity. The kind of presence that doesn't just light up a moment, but leaves a lasting imprint. So here's the question we each have to ask ourselves: what kind of presence do I want to become? Because true attractiveness is not something you're born with. It's not a trait, it's a decision you make every time you choose. Presence over distraction, confidence over performance, kindness over ego, growth over comfort. It's something you build, word by word, choice by choice, day by day. And the good news is it's available to anyone, no matter where you start, no matter what you look like, no matter your past, because becoming truly attractive has nothing to do with being noticed. It has everything to do with being remembered, and that's entirely up to you.